In 1769, Jefferson's political life begins when he is elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses. He is just 26.
The House of Burgesses is the state legislature of the time. Being elected to the House of Burgesses has as much a sense of obligation as opportunity to it. It's what you did if you owned land and you were of society.
It's almost an entitlement that Jefferson and his friends are going to step into these roles. It's like, if you are wealthy today, you're on the boards of museums and of arts organizations. That's how you have political and social power.
The Virginia of this period was being reshaped in many ways. The 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War had ended, but British troops were staying. Royal authority, which had ceded the power to pursue land titles, had taken that power back. And the kinds of men that Jefferson would have been with would have been affected by that. And so there's an entire redefinition, an entire reordering of what it meant to be a colonist in exactly the years that Jefferson is in Williamsburg.
And Jefferson distinguishes himself in the House of Burgesses by being a radical, rejecting the idea of British authority and passionately railing against the British Empire. Because to Jefferson, given the distance of the Atlantic Ocean, the distance of the king, inevitably at this point, the British crown seems incredibly out of touch in the colonies. And the sentimental attachments that some of the older generation had begin to wipe away.
As Jefferson continues to expand his family and home in Virginia, the British continue their fight to defend their empire against France, the Netherlands, and Spain.
Britain is involved in conflict around the world. And as a consequence of that, Britain has a substantial public debt that has to be paid. And it looks to the colonies for revenue.
For years, Parliament has been taxing the American colonies and using the proceeds to fund military campaigns around the world. One of the most egregious taxes is the Stamp Act of 1765, a direct tax on all printed materials, from newspapers to playing cards. The Stamp Act was the fourth in a series of taxes that infuriated the settlers, particularly Virginia's elite. In the years following these taxes, resentment amongst the colonists grows.
We have to ask ourselves, why do these Virginia elites, why do wealthy people like Jefferson and Washington become revolutionaries? We expect the poor and the desperate to take up arms and become revolutionaries. Why do they do it? They do it because they believe that their authority is threatened by this British assertion of sovereignty over them. And so the issue very quickly moves from one of raising revenue to one of political power and autonomy. And Virginians, especially elite Virginians like Jefferson, highly value their autonomy and their power.
The Stamp Act would constitute an assault on the fundamental liberties of these people because American patriots in the 1760s worried about recognizing their equal standing within the British Empire.
The Sons of Liberty start as a particular group in Boston in response to the Stamp Act. And then in the late 1760s, early 1770s, the phrase Sons of Liberty will spread through the colonies. It's almost like a brand or a hashtag, right?
Throughout the late 1760s and early 1770s, tension between Britain and the colonies continues to escalate and eventually erupts into violence.
And then in 1773, to protest taxes on tea, the Sons of Liberty board a group of merchant vessels one night in Boston Harbor, seize the tea, and dump it into the harbor because the tea cannot be taxed if it is not loaded onto shore. But as soon as that tea is offloaded, then the colony is responsible for the taxes.
The Boston Tea Party is an eruption of a long slumbering resentment. It basically says taxation without representation. We're being treated as a society that is being taken from and being given little.
The white men who participated in the Tea Party dressed as Native Americans that night. To be dramatic and to draw attention to say, okay, maybe we are different, maybe we are not British subjects, maybe there's a new American citizen here that is no longer a subject.
Then in 1774, to punish Boston, British Parliament passes a series of laws known in the colonies as the Intolerable Acts. These acts greatly curtail the independent governance of Massachusetts and stoke further resentment.
Then the colonies begin to write to each other, saying, we are being treated unfairly. In what ways are you being treated unfairly? And are we going to band together to stand as one? Are we going to accept this as a single event, or are we going to see this as a long train of abuses?
Jefferson becomes a powerful colonial voice, speaking out against Britain. In 1774, he writes, "We do declare that these their natural and legal rights have in frequent instances been invaded by the Parliament of Great Britain. That all such assumptions of unlawful power are dangerous to the rights of the British Empire in general, and should be considered as its common cause." What had been small bursts of discontent began to take root as the seeds of revolution. As a response to the so-called Intolerable Acts of 1774, the 13 colonies that previously had little in common and little interaction begin banding together against British oppression. And Jefferson continues to write, railing against British tyranny.
In Virginia, the House of Burgesses have received letters from their colleagues in Massachusetts explaining what happened. So the high-ranking members propose a day of fasting and prayer, and Jefferson and the Burgesses vote to support Massachusetts. They go up the street to the Raleigh Tavern and assemble and pass their agreement to have this day of fasting and prayer to demonstrate a gentle form of protest. It's a public statement of solidarity with Massachusetts.
On the 1st of June, they are going to go to their churches and they're going to pray for the people in Massachusetts. They're going to show their allegiance in that march.
It's basically saying, hey, we need to sacrifice. We need to make a political statement by fasting and praying.
They are deciding upon a day of religious observation. But that can only be decided upon by the royal governor, because the royal governor is not only the representative of the crown, he is the colonial representative of the Church of England. When he learns that the Burgesses gathered in the Raleigh Tavern have decided to do this amongst themselves, well, it's his prerogative to dissolve the House of Burgesses at his will. So there you have Jefferson and an elected body now officially in a state of rebellion.
Political activism. Jefferson's not just writing letters anymore.
As discontent escalates, so does the British response.
British troops are marching in New York. They're mustering threateningly in other places. The public gunpowder stores are seized in Massachusetts and Virginia. The gunpowder is supposed to be there so that if the royal governor calls up the militia to fight a war against Native Americans or a slave uprising, there is ammunition for public protection. But the royal governor seizes the powder, takes it to a ship waiting offshore. And so the royal governor is saying, I am not going to protect you anymore. You are the enemy now.
And so in 1774, there you have Thomas Jefferson in that group of former Burgesses gathered in that Raleigh Tavern. They're standing there arguing, debating, and bickering and trying to decide, are we really going to forget ourselves as Virginians and a sovereign colony and light the spark of revolution? Absolutely.